Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on when you're watching this conversation. I'm Peter Stanton, publisher of the Worcester Business Journal. I'd like to welcome you to a conversation with WBJ's 2020 Business Leaders of the Year, a conversation where we're calling Leading Through Crisis and Change. Worcester Business Journal's Business Leader of the Year Awards go back some 40 years, and it's an event I've always loved to attend, where we both celebrate the achievements of our honorees and have a conversation about leadership and what they've learned over the years. And what a time this is to test the skills of every CEO and leader of an organization. Our Business Leaders of the Year issue published on March 2nd, where the stories ran on our 5 business leaders. Actually, it's 7 when you include the 3 members of the Hyder family. As well, we also have 3 Business Leaders of the Year Hall of Fame inductees. This particular session is with, not with the Hall of Fame, that'll be a separate session. That'll also be available on demand to be viewed. This production and presentation of the Business Leaders of the Year is made possible by the support of our presenting sponsors, Country Bank and Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, 2 organizations who are committed to excellence in leadership in our community. And that's what these awards are all about. So it's now my pleasure to introduce our panel of business leader honorees. And they are Harry Quickinis, the president of Tabletop Pies. Hi, Harry.
Hi, Peter. How are you doing today?
Good. Nice to have you with us. Brandale Randolph, founder and CEO of the 1854 Cycling Company. Brandale?
Yes. How are you doing?
Good. We can see the 1854 there, and next with a background that tells you also which company he's with is Paul Sulu, and Paul is the CEO of Little Leaf Farms. Top of the morning, Paul.
Yes. Good morning, Peter, and the whole group.
And then the winners, we recognize sort of the family group from Ed Hyder's Mediterranean Marketplace. That is Miriam Gregory and their mom, Edna Hyder. And joining us for today's conversation is Miriam Hyder.
Hi, everyone.
And then last but not least, Stephanie Page, who is the executive director of Abby's House in Worcester.
Hello.
All right, Stephanie. So I'm going to now hand it off to our moderator, and that is Patrick Cahill. And Patrick is the vice president of Massachusetts Markets for Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare. Patrick, it's all yours.
Great. Thank you, Peter. It's great to be with all of you today. You know, as Peter mentioned, this has been obviously a very challenging time for everyone. You know, and I think everyone has had to show leadership qualities. But for all of you as leaders, you know, in your respective fields and with your respective businesses, you know, a truly trying time. So I'm, you know, interested in the conversation we can have this morning and, you know, help people understand how you've managed through this, but also before that, how you've, you know, built your businesses and have become leaders in your community. So, you know, while this has been obviously a time we want to talk about how and reflect on how people have managed through, don't want to lose the broader picture and what has all brought all of you to this point. So, you know, so with that, you know, Harvard Pilgrim's thrilled to sponsor this event and be with all of you virtually. Looking forward to in the months ahead when we can all be together again in person to celebrate. But, you know, with that, would love to dive in. So, you know, and we'll try to have a conversation here so we don't have to, you know, all answer each question, and we can, you know, please jump in and we'll do the best we can in navigating it. So, you know, just kind of, you know, starting out, you know, leadership is more important than ever, just given the environment we've been challenged through these last few months. But as we come out of the economic shutdown due to the coronavirus, and now as a nation are coming together in the face of institutional racism, which has been, you know, certainly magnified by the death of George Floyd and other incidents around the country. You know, how have, you know, you personally or your organizations responded to these different events and you know, are trying to, you know, drive forward in a way that will, you know, make meaningful change? So, really open it up to any of you to kick us off.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would just say that, the combination of the global pandemic, the worst, at least job loss since the Great Depression, and then the George Floyd, protest, and all the questions we're asking as a society, I think together to say that those three things make up unprecedented times, I think is an understatement.
Yeah.
So what we tried to do is basically just amp up communication with everybody in our organization, because people are thinking, are feeling different things, and just being able to have that discussion amongst our colleagues here, I think, is most important. We went through a process most recently over the whole George Floyd, and we found that we have people from 21 countries that work at Little Leaf Farms, but then our management team is not as diverse as our employee base, and that's something that we're reflecting on going forward. So it's unprecedented times. We're all struggling and doing our own ways to get through it, but I think most importantly, having open lines of communication and being able to have the discussions with your fellow employees and colleagues is really important. That's what we've tried to do.
Anyone else like to add to that?
I know for us
Harry?
at Table Talk, it certainly has been unprecedented times, and the contradictory goals that we've had of keeping our employees safe during this time of crisis, but still being able to keep producing and get pies to our customers. It's been let's just say very challenging, and I think Paul brought up some excellent points. For us, communication has been key, and particularly in those early days after the governor closed down the schools and instituted social distancing, trying to keep our workforce secure, safe, and I don't know if comfortable is the right word, but there's a lot of fear out there of what could happen, and it was a challenge. But the key thing was communication and listening to people and their fears and how to get over that. So I think it was very, very challenging time for us as an organization to keep producing in the midst of this, and still continues. And certainly the killing of George Floyd has added another dimension to the crisis that goes on, and something that we need to confront as well, the systemic racism that we have in our country. So it certainly has been challenging from a leadership point of view. I will certainly concur with that.
Yeah, Pat.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
At Abby's house, we're a little bit different in that we're a nonprofit, and our mission is to help women who are homeless, low income, or have experienced trauma and abuse, and provide housing, shelter, and support services to them. These are women with and without children. So in March, when the word spread about COVID-19 and the concerns and the shutdowns, our concern was the women that we serve and their children and their safety. So many of the women here have health conditions that really put them at great risk from COVID-19. So for us, the commitment to our mission had to be first and foremost. And it's challenging for the staff in that setting when we all have concerns about our own well-being, but our staff were able to step up, and the organization could step up to really meet those needs first and foremost, and try to put into place what we needed to keep ourselves safe and the volunteers who remained with us safe as well. So I would say, for us, like commitment and mission were sort of first and foremost for us. we've had to pivot like most all places, you know, do more remote. We've had to increase cleaning, right? Keep the properties, you know, really disinfected. We've had to address food needs of the women that we help. We've developed new partnerships with St. Paul's Food Pantry and REC to help people access food. That we've worked with many partners across the city of Worcester to provide some temporary overflow shelters, specifically for women that are more trauma-informed and feel safe for women, both with children and without children. And there's been some great collaborative efforts. So it's interesting for us. We've had to really almost, you know, really amp up what we do in order to respond to the virus. And then, of course, you know, we see economic losses and really concerned about what the future will hold, particularly for those at low income levels. And then we've got, of course, the structural racism that's always existed, but really is we're all talking about. And I think that's progress to be talking about it and how we as a community and society are responding, and even within our own organization. And safety and inclusion and respect and dignity, those are all really core values of Abby's house. And so really examining that and making sure, you know, that all women who are with us are feeling that, or everybody who comes through our doors or interacts with us feels that safety, inclusion, their dignity is respected, and that we're advocating and listening and stepping up for them.
Randall, you wanted to jump in as well?
Oh, yeah, for me, it's been way complex. And obviously, as a Black person in America, this has been an ongoing struggle way before George Floyd, well, you know, way before the George Floyd things occurred. For me, it started back in, I think, February. We did not receive any PPP. Our applications, like many African-American small businesses, were rejected. And that was sort of the first struggle. And then we had the struggle of, we're in the middle of fundraising and to get our factory that can increase our manufacturing capacity up. And that's been a struggle too, because as you know, venture capital firms lend less than 2% to African-Americans. So that's a small part of that institutional things that were happening prior to all the uprisings and things like that. But then we look at all the job losses that have happened, you know, particularly there are articles about that 40% of small businesses owned by Blacks will never return. So what we tried to do during this is increase what we do so that we can hire more people, because our first projections of bringing in a small place and hiring about 40 to 50 people, we're now amplifying that. We kind of want to amplify what we do because we see the effect of this loss being more long-term. Because one of the experiences I have is that as a person who lived in Los Angeles during the Los Angeles riots, I saw that community not being built back for a number of years. I mean, it was probably 10 years before we returned to some semblance of normal, but even now, some of those buildings still aren't standing. So the job loss and the economic loss of that is going to be felt from the top down. And then we had this shocker about 3 weeks ago where we were seeing police misuse bicycles as weapons. And so the entire industry sort of like had reverberated, and you saw these statements coming from the other manufacturers of bicycles. And for us, being the only Black-owned company that manufactures bicycles for police officers and law enforcement, we had to remain silent. There was no sort of like statement we can make other than putting our bike out there and showing what it can do, because in this world in which we're trying to live, in which our kids have a better life, we see a need for police to be involved and impactful with the communities, but given the resources to contact public health and other things like that and bring them into the conversation instead of using force. And those are other things we can talk about. But for the most part, we reopened a barrel shop to help Bethany Hill Place. And that was a place where people were struggling to even find computers and toilet paper for their residents. And this is something that we have dedicated ourselves to for the last couple of months. And I believe in the future, we're going to be doing a lot more of this stuff. But in the end, I love the fact that we're all talking about this from an economic point of view, because after all this equality, people still have to put food on the table. And the best way to do that is to create living wage jobs, which is what we're all about.
Thank you. And maybe Miriam, we can start this question with you, just kind of building off that conversation. You know, clearly this has been very turbulent times, and as we said at the beginning, a challenging time for leaders, but a challenging time for everyone. You know, with a family-run business, how have you all kind of managed to balance for yourselves, for your employees, the combination of this, you know, work never seems to end, right? When you don't go anywhere, all that kind of stuff. How have you balanced the lives that you and your staff and your family are trying to manage and managing the business, and also personal during a very challenging and emotional time for all of us? Yeah. And if you have an answer, I'd love it, because as you know,
I wish I had the answer. I will say that when this happened, I kind of want to tie it all together as far as being a business leader. Back in March, we were, like a lot of businesses, on the fence about what do you do. It was around March 15th that I noticed our staff really started getting uncomfortable. And you were hearing a lot of opinions in here. We see, you know, on a good day, we can see up to 300 people in the shop. And a lot of people are like family. We have a lot of conversations. And some people were kind of naysayers about the whole coronavirus. And other people were very much frightened. And no one was wearing masks yet back in March. You know, you would have been looked at like you were kind of nutty if you were doing that. And by March 16th, I said to my family, I'm like, I think we have to close the store. And at the beginning, they looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, no one else was doing that yet in Worcester. And I said, well, it's up to us. Like, let's be the leader. Let's do this. And maybe we'll help somebody else make the decision that's on the fence about keeping their staff safe. So number one was our staff safety. So we did close the store. And for about 2 or 3 weeks where we just did nothing. And so as far as balance, that's the first time I've kind of had like just full on family time. So in a way that was really nice to be home with my husband, and we have a 18-month-old daughter. And so that was, when else does somebody that runs a small business or any business really get that time? So that was a beautiful thing. And then we started slowly working our way back. And unfortunately, at the time, we couldn't bring everyone back with us. And I think our staff was also enjoying some much needed time. A lot of them are undergrads or grad students who also put a lot of work in at our shop as well. So it's not exactly a balance, but it was kind of like a complete just period to relax and refresh. I'm kind of getting off topic here, I feel like, but we've slowly started to build the business back in different ways, which I think I can probably speak to as an answer to other questions later on. But we are now, you know, my mom, my brother, and I, and my husband all have our own roles here right now that are different than our normal roles. So it's a work in progress, and we're figuring it out. But we've lost a little bit of that home family time right now, because we are like kind of scrambling to move forward with this new side of our business that I can talk about later. But yeah, that's the best balance I've had in a long time. If that helps.
That's great. Yeah. Anyone else like to have a few comments about how you've been balancing things for yourselves or for, you know, your employees during this time?
I can just add, I just think we have to, as leaders, be really flexible, you know, in the moment, and listen to people, adapt. Well, for us, keeping our mission front and center, and just being gentle with ourselves, and, you know, encouraging people to take care of themselves so they can do what they need to do, and encouraging people to stay safe. It's definitely, it's not business as usual by any means.
Yeah, no, that's one, I just, as an anecdote, you know, for Harvard Pilgrim, we've been able to work basically completely remotely now for several months. And so that's been a nice transition. But now, as we've gotten into the summer, reminding our teams that, even though there's maybe nowhere to go, please still take some time
Yeah.
off
Yeah.
and build that in, because I think there's just this perpetualness of, you know, these last few months that it's hard to stop. So, you know, I think we're all mindful of that as well. And it's a little, you know, it's just not the normal, right? But I think that's something we've been trying to be cognizant of. So, you know, maybe moving a little bit beyond, you know, just these last few months and more broadly, you know, being leaders over a longer period of time, does anyone like to share some of the, you know, I'd say other challenges you faced pre-COVID, and how, you know, you came through those and how that made you a stronger leader and maybe helped you position for this time period? Paul, if you want.
I'll take a crack at it. And, you know,
Yeah.
I would say that, you know, you come into an area or you know, this time where we've got all these unbelievable stresses, right? So I think the best way I've heard it described is that if you had positive things going on pre-COVID versus negative things going on pre-COVID, it was going to be amplified based on what's happened here. So the thing that I've learned and I've tried to put in practice at Little Leaf is my management team. You know, because it's if you have an organization, it's way beyond just what one person can do. It's ultimately the strength and depth and the cohesion of your management team. And that I think is just so important, because if they're cohesive, then that cascades into the organization, and the organization is cohesive. So that's something that, regardless of the economic conditions we're in, but was amplified around the whole COVID crisis. And I'm so thankful that I put the resources, the time and energy to really, you know, build, I think, a really great management team.
Anyone else like to share some thoughts, Brandel?
Yeah, and just to piggyback off that, it's like if anything I've learned pre-COVID, post-COVID, in terms of all these things, is optimism. Because throughout all of the things that have happened in my company, for instance, and I think that's a great quote, we've had to remain optimistic about what could happen if these things come to fruition, and focus on that future is something. And focusing on that future where we have over 300 people employed has kept me focused on building a great product. Because when everything went remote, we still had to build, because up until I think 2 weeks ago, we were still having the Boston Marathon, which is when the Boston Police Department wanted their bikes. So we had to keep building as if it was going to occur. So we had to figure out ways of getting this done, and the focus had to remain on that. And I think in terms of leadership and going back to the family work-life balance, that focus on when we need to prioritize what is something that makes leadership very valuable. And it's something I've learned that I'm going to carry with me forever, to tell my grandkids, yeah, during 2020, with all of that stuff going on, we have to focus on building the next gen of this bike. And so, and I'll exaggerate a little bit, as we all will, but I think that the focus is part of leadership that we have to give to our management and things, because there are certain things that have to be done right now as leaders that we can't put on hold. And life, family, and our companies are just some of those things.
Thank you. So, you know, I guess another aspect of leadership, and I think it's been hugely important across our community, across, you know, I'm sure all of your businesses, is communication during this time period. Communication to your, as Paul said, your management team, to your broader staff, to your customers, clients, you know, other business partners. You know, can anyone share, you know, some maybe tips or things that you found very successful? I think, you know, certainly it's a period where more communication's been helpful for folks, and communicating on probably a broader range of topics than maybe one normally would. So I don't know if anybody has, you know, thoughts how you've managed through all those things and tried to go on. I don't know, Harry, if you'd like to.
Yeah, I'd be glad to talk about that, because I think, you know,
Yeah.
communication is key. And that's, you know, to get through this crisis. And to build upon what Brandel said about optimism, I think that's so important in in the midst of the crisis, how to communicate, calmness remotely, and, it has its own challenges, but, over the telephone lines, but, that calmness, and then the optimism is still to keep focused on the future and keep, our management team not to get distracted and to keep them, as I think Paul alluded to, cohesively, moving forward is so critical. And, what we did, we put together a COVID-19 task force, basically of our team and a couple of other members, and then had sort of, I guess, an executive committee of that, or what we call the squad, sort of the four of us, myself, our director of operations, operations manager, and then director of HR, to really deal with some of the nitty-gritty issues of trying to keep our employees safe and monitoring their health. But I tell you that daily communication with the task force was critical in keeping everyone together, particularly at the beginning. And that's, for us, one thing we had to do as, to deal with, people's fear and uncomfortableness with coming to work. We ultimately, faced with a lot of issues there, we actually gave people the choice of taking a leave of absence for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Try to get through basically the end of March, the beginning of April, when supposedly April 8th, if I remember, was when this was all going to get resolved. And but I think in giving that, listening and hearing people's concerns and giving that leave of absence, I think was really, I think, critical for us being able to move forward to keep operating through this time, because I think it gave people all of a sudden the choice. I think people felt that they were heard of their concerns, but then they had the difficult decision. Now they had the problem. Now it was on their shoulders to make the decision. That's so it's kind of interesting that not as many people as we expected actually took the leave of absence. But what was important for us was to offer that, and to hear people's concerns, and I think that proved invaluable for us being able to move forward. Create a little bit of tough times over 2 weeks, but our staff really pulled together to get us through that, and we still have our challenges. I mean, that's I think we're seeing a little bit of a post Memorial Day mini surge of positive testing, and that's, so we need to we're dealing with that. But what's helped is just having that daily communication and to have a forum for people to voice their concerns and their worries, and that has really helped us get through this crisis.
Anyone else have any thoughts on how you've either communicated with your own teams or with your clients or the broader community?
Yeah, I can add to it. So we definitely heard the advice early on to increase communication. So, we have staff that are weekly, if not more than weekly, in touch with all of our residents and our shelter guests, asking about what their needs are, helping connect them to resources. We put out communications immediately to the public. Abby's House has a pretty large base of supporters. We really depend on individuals and local businesses and religious groups and civic groups and foundations to support what we do. We put out communication immediately to them and regular communication. I think our board increased its communication. My communication with our board chair increased to almost weekly, if not more than weekly, for a while. Our staff management team has been meeting weekly by phone, staying in touch with each other. So all that increase, absolutely, we've had to do, and really working together too. And what's really been great for us is, I don't know if all of you have experienced this, but people reaching out to us too, which has been great. When people are calling us to say, how are you doing? What do you need? We're your partner, or we're your supporter. What can we do to help you? So that's really been phenomenal too. I want to say, one more thing, and I don't know if anybody else has experienced this, is that I've been coming into the office almost every day since the beginning. So I think that's for me, one of the unique pieces about being an executive director or, in the leadership role in the organization, of being here and being present with people, and being available to people. I'm always available if I'm not on site, but definitely being on site and having that presence too.
So this has certainly been, building kind of off that conversation, this has certainly been a crisis that has required the community to come together. I think, and certainly as leaders in the community, does anyone want to share how either, you've worked with, some either community organizations or your broader community, or how, during this, has it changed how you, think about how to partner or how to, support your broader community? Because I think this time really has called on all of us to come together in a way, to support each other. And I think, as you said, Stephanie, to come together to support the right organizations in the right way. So I don't know if anyone has any thoughts to share on that.
Well, I'll take a shot. I mean, first off, this COVID issue has been interesting because as a food producer, I'm sure Harry, you were in the same position. The notion of like, well, we're just going to shut down and protect everybody and do the right thing for our employees. Imagine if the food industry in this country all decided to do that, right? Imagine what would have happened, right? There would have been, fundamental societal breakdown. So we had to communicate to our employees that we had a responsibility, and being part of the food industry is a special responsibility. And that was really, a call to action, a call to arms. And I'm so proud of all of my people and that they responded to that. Now we're dealing with this unbelievable job loss and the economic fallout. So we've always supported Loaves and Fishes, Daily Table, and now we're upping our donation to the Greater Boston Food Bank. That's something that I think is really important. And I think part of being, I know Harry, you do this as well, part of being a local business, as compared to all my West Coast competitors in the salad business, right? The New England market for them is just a market, right? Well, it's where we do business, it's where we live, it's where all our employees live, and we are connected to that community. And I think it's so important when you have tough times like that, that you double down to that commitment to your community.
Yeah, and for me, it's been a little different. I've had conversations in private, none I will disclose names or whoever, with a lot of police departments and law enforcement agencies, particularly around this defund the police movement, which I believe in. Because if we are to have honest conversations, and these are the conversations I'm able to have because I'm one of the few Black vendors slated for a lot of these departments, it's all about how do we help our communities as a whole. And how I was able to translate this is that, can you imagine a world in which police officers are not responding to things that are better suited for healthcare professionals? Can you imagine how we can get to the root of a lot of the issues you deal with so that you're only dealing with the issues that are related to actual law enforcement? I mean, it's kind of like we don't send the fire department to handle things, outside of fires, or nor do we send EMS to this. But can you imagine a world in which police are only dealing with the acts that are for law enforcement, and how much safer that makes our communities, knowing that there is a support net there? So when we talk about a world in which a product such as a bike, which is more approachable than, say, a squad car, but gives you the same access to public health officials, because I don't want police doing the job of public health officials. I want police doing the job of a police and a public health official doing the job of a public health official. And this bike bridges the two, and how we can have those discussions, because frankly, what is going on behind the scenes is that there are a lot of police departments that want to change. They want to have a better relationship with their communities. They want to provide safety to their communities, but they don't know how. And now that I've been given sort of this platform in which I'm sort of in the middle, I kind of can have that dialogue in all honesty that I could not have before, in fear of jeopardizing contracts and relationships. But now we can have that conversation because I imagine a world in which children don't fear law enforcement, because seeing these videos of a child playing basketball and having to hide behind a car when he sees a police officer ride by, and that was in Connecticut. You know, seeing a little girl having to be calmed by a police officer because she was playing in a park and she was petrified at the sight is something that we as a society have to play our role in. And my role right now is to facilitate the bridge between the two, because we have a different world in our future that we have never lived in before. And in this world and society, we have to play a part. And I'm glad that a lot of police departments are willing to have this dialogue now. And I have to keep myself open to such conversations. And the bravery for us to have them is sort of needed right now, because it's community over commerce, as we say.
Thank you. And Miriam, I'll come back to you. This next question, you know, you mentioned early on kind of the change right at the beginning and more being able to spend more time as a family with a young child. You know, for all of you, as this kind of comes around, you know, what are those silver linings, or what are those potential changes or new opportunities that have come up, you know, through this crisis? How do you think differently about how you're going to do things going forward? Are there different opportunities? And so, you know, love to hear that from you.
Who's starting?
Yep, Miriam, it'd be great if you did. Yeah.
So for us, it's changed everything. And I hate to use the word silver lining when we're talking about, you know, a virus that has been so awful for some people, but business-wise, it has forced us to finally change the things we've been talking about changing for 5 or 10 years. So as I mentioned, you know, we did a complete shutdown for a couple of weeks. And then what we did after that was, okay, you can kind of call in an order, but for that, people needed to be familiar with our business and what we had. So we finally built the website we have been talking about forever, where you can shop our entire inventory right online now. And the more people I've spoken to, so again, I'm sorry to backtrack, we're not allowing people in our stores for the safety of our customers and our staff. So everything is online order, curbside pickup only right now. And it's actually working very well. And yes, one day we will reopen our doors. But I think that now we have a whole different clientele to cater to as well, because we are now having young moms that have little kids that are like, this is perfect for me. I can pull right up and get my groceries and support a local business at the same time. We have elderly people using it. We've got all kinds of people using this service that we're providing now. And 99% of people are like, this is excellent. It's easy. And thank you for looking out for us and your staff. There's still that 1% of people that really want to come through our doors, but it's changed our business tremendously, because if you've ever been to our store, the whole business is based around your experience, the smells and the sights and interacting with our staff. And right now we have to put that aside and do what's best with the circumstances we're in. But I think moving forward, the challenge for us is going to be running almost 2 businesses side by side, the in-house hiders experience and also the online shopping experience. So that will be interesting for us. But yeah, it's forced us to change a lot of things, and we're reworking where things are in our store. And I think we're hopefully going to open and be better than ever.
Anyone else want to share anything on, you know, how this time has maybe changed some of the way you do things, and if you think those will kind of carry through? And I guess Bill, Peter, Harry, go ahead. Yeah.
I guess what's interesting, just on a personal level, I think it's kind of forced me to be in my office more. You know, that's since so many of our meetings now take place, you know, by phone, even our internal meetings. And actually, I find in some ways I'm probably getting more things done. You know, that's by being actually in my office. I really miss having that contact, you know, with people. But it has, it's kind of curious. I now spend my time in my office, which is kind of, with not how I conducted myself before. So it's been a little eye-opening in terms of, gee, I can get more stuff done these days.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's something that I've heard from business partners we have and from other colleagues, that it does feel like, maybe you're getting more done, though I think we all miss the, those side conversations or the, 5-minute, kind of catch up with people and that kind of stuff that you'd normally get over the course of the day. But it's a balance. So really, for all of you, as we start to wrap up, really interested, as we come out of, first of all, or, move towards coming out of the COVID crisis, and hopefully, public health officials continue to guide us to lower the, the rate of, people being infected by the virus, and work towards a vaccine. Continue to put strategies and efforts into, improving against institutional and structural racism. With those big, heavy issues, what are you looking for in the months and year ahead? What are the challenges, the opportunities that you think we're going to have as a community and as a region? To really open up to anyone there.
Well, I'll be happy to start. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many challenges that, that over the last couple, 3 months that we have to deal with, that it's kind of, it's a really big question. But so I'm going to focus it more on sort of food, because we import over 90% of the food that we eat here that's grown outside of Massachusetts, for that matter, outside of New England. So I'm a big believer in building a stronger, more resilient community in a wide variety of ways. And I happen to be focused on the food part of our economy. And I think there's going to be tremendous opportunities to continue to grow, local food and provide better value and better freshness and better quality to the consumers. And then being a local company, having the ability to reinvest back in the community, provide economic opportunity for people in the community in the region, and then begin to wrestle with this issue around systemic racism. As I mentioned before, we have a very diverse workforce, but we don't have a very diverse management team. So that is something that I'm going to start. I'm aware of, and I'm going to start working on that. But in general, I hope the new normal is a better normal, because you're hearing a lot about the new normal, and let's make it better.
And maybe Stephanie, maybe from your perspective, as we kind of move forward, how do we work as a community to, help if we do see, this, kind of system go on for a while and, continued kind of economic loss? How do we, how do you think about the coming months and in the coming year, and how we do things?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking about community, because, and obviously everybody here is a part of the community. And, I think the region that we live in, and Worcester in particular, is just a fabulous place for people to work together and come together. And I think we've seen that through, the last several months. And the hope is that that will continue and increase, as well as we coordinate our efforts and communicate with each other across the community. I think there's real challenges, and I think there's so much uncertainty still. And I think leading right now is about leading in a time of uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen with COVID-19. I feel like while things are changing right now, and we're sort of getting back to business, we still have a lot of uncertainty about COVID-19. There's a lot to be done around structural racism across the community. and economically, what will happen. So I think there's going to be many challenges ahead. I too, has been mentioned, very optimistic and hopeful person. So I think it's hard not to lead if you're not, I think it's hard to lead if you're not optimistic and hopeful. And it's in some ways just a time for us really as a community to really work together on these challenges. But I think we've got a lot of hard work ahead of us, and leadership now, I think is as important as it's ever been.
I think that for me, the future is like threefold. On one hand, you have, I believe we're going to go into this world of a greener economy in manufacturing, which we're making hybrid goods, like for us, all electric bicycles. We're looking towards motorcycles and other type units. And being a part of this new economy that's going to be greener, high tech here in this region is going to be great. I think that the hopefulness is that if we are going to be including and talking about structural racism, to say that we're now creating greener jobs, high paying jobs for people who have been disproportionately left out of this economy. Because part of the reason why I started is that we see people who are disproportionately left out of the inclusive economy. And COVID-19 and its disproportionate effect on Black communities, particularly low-income Black communities, it says a lot about that. People who could not afford to have proper health care, proper nutrition, and those things are disproportionately dying from COVID. So it's not just about those getting sick, it's about those who are dying. And underneath all of that is an economic foundation that has to be reset. And the resetting of this foundation in Massachusetts in particular, I'm grateful to be a part of it. And for me, it's a situation where we're going from seeing people who are disproportionately affected by institutional racism to be now a part of an economy in which they can feed their children and lead them towards a brighter future for themselves, in which they're going to be included in the next generation of robotics, next generation of advanced manufacturing, the next wave of job creation. It's something that I definitely think that is essential for what we're doing. And I think that if we're going to talk about getting towards the equality and the promise of America, we need to start talking about how can we bring people in and pay them what they're worth and how they're valued, and bringing them into this economy in ways that only we can do here in Massachusetts.
And so, I don't know, Harry or Miriam, if you have anything to add. You're both part of businesses that I think probably bring people together, right? So I'm not sharing any tabletop pies with anybody. So that, that's a solo kind of deal, but
you can always have the 4-inch pie, that's it.
Exactly. But, just, any thoughts from you about, as you look ahead, for both of your businesses and you guys, I think Miriam, you shared, kind of the future of running two businesses almost for a period of time. I don't know, just kind of building on that a little bit.
I do think that I appreciate that, we are a food, part of the food economy. As you say, our business really does depend on people coming together. Pies are a great way to celebrate family, to celebrate, friends and family dinners. And that's the challenge for us that we see, is just what is going to be happening to that in the future. And, the question we still ask is, are we going to be over this by Thanksgiving? Or are we still going to be having Thanksgiving dinner by Zoom? That's, that for us is the challenge. And at this point, we try to stay optimistic and just go, because we actually have to start making pies now for Thanksgiving. So it's a bit of a challenge for us in that regard. And we still have to have employees that are able to come to work and who are safe. And so it's challenging, and it would be nice to, if we could know what that what family gatherings are going to look like a few months, basically the next 3 to 4 months and building up to Thanksgiving, because our business depends upon that so much. And if anyone has any, if their crystal ball is working today, please let us know. But, Stephanie said, have to really be based on optimism and kind of leading and just hoping that we will be able to find a way. And I think because, just that urge for families to celebrate, to be together, it's such a strong urge, and how we can come up with ways to help that is kind of our challenge.
So, really, thank you. I think, and Harry, you just referenced that, Stephanie's comments about to be a leader, you need to be an optimistic person, I think, really holds true for me. You have to, I think you all have demonstrated throughout your careers, but also, in this conversation, that you're optimists who care about your community, and, want to support that community, whether it's your employees, your clients, your customers. And so really thank you all for your leadership during this challenging time. Excited for what all you can continue to build. And really thank you for taking a few minutes to share your stories and your thoughts on leadership this morning. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And
Thank you, Patrick. And
Thank you.
thank you to everyone here. And as I said, just feel honored to be among this group. And it's really been a great hour here. So thank you very much to be with you.
feel the same way.
Thanks.
Likewise. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for the Worcester Business Journal for bringing us all together. So.
Okay.